This is Donald J. Trump, the 45th and 47th President of the United States. Recently, President Trump signed an executive order titled Preserving and Protecting the Integrity of American Elections. Trump ordered the Election Assistance Commission to amend its national mail voter registration form to require applicants to provide documentary proof of United States citizenship. And none of this should be a problem, right? Right?
Almost immediately after President Trump signed the executive order, legal experts around the country sounded the alarm. 4 separate lawsuits have now been filed to block the order from going into effect. The most recent was filed this past week by 19 attorneys general.
That's right, 4 separate lawsuits against Trump because his executive action requires that a citizen filling out a form prove that they are a U.S. citizen on a federal voter registration form for U.S. citizens.
So many Americans of voting age don't have the documents that the new order requires in order to vote. For example, millions of Americans don't have access to their birth certificates.
Why not? Also, you can order a new one. It's pretty easy.
About 50% of Americans don't have a passport.
And
millions of people would be required to present multiple documents if they've changed their name, whether because of marriage or for some other reason.
Can't believe Trump is making people suffer the indignity of having to present multiple documents. Damn you, Orange Man!
And as is often the case with voter suppression, these new restrictions would disproportionately impact minority voters and low-income voters.
There it is, the soft bigotry of low expectations. Thanks, MSNBC. Anyway, that claim stems from a study by the Brennan Center for Justice at NYU, a study that was conducted in 2006. The Brennan Center claims that minority citizens are less likely to possess government-issued photo identification. According to the survey, African American citizens also disproportionately lack photo ID and claim that 25% of African American voting age citizens have no current government-issued photo ID. And for some reason, the Brennan Center for Justice has never done a follow-up survey in the 19 years since their original. Why? Well, they would probably get a different result that doesn't fit their narrative, so moving on.
You mentioned birth certificates. As I recall, the EO doesn't even allow a birth certificate as good enough proof.
Fact check false. The executive order states an identification document compliant with the requirements of the Real ID Act of 2005 that indicates that the applicant is a citizen of the United States, and a birth certificate meets that Real ID document requirement. Dude couldn't even do the bare minimum of reading the Trump executive action. But I hit Command F and I searched birth certificate and it didn't show up. Trump bad. Anyway, one of the plaintiffs in the 4 lawsuits against President Trump is House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries, who had this to say about Trump's EO.
Donald Trump issued an unconstitutional and illegal executive order. We are challenging that unconstitutional and illegal executive order in court, and we are going to win. Donald Trump doesn't have the power to decide how federal elections are governed. That power is given to the voters, state legislatures, and Congress itself, pursuant to the election clause in the United States Constitution.
But Trump is not unlawfully telling states how to conduct their elections. Only citizens are allowed to vote, right? So this federal form is asking for proof of said citizenship instead of simply relying on the honor system.
What is the so-called SAVE Act allegedly about? The Republicans are lying to the American people. They claim that the so-called SAVE Act is about making sure that only American citizens can vote.
The SAVE Act, i.e. the Safeguard American Voter Eligibility Act, would require everyone registering to vote to provide a document verifying their citizenship. But dollar store Barack Obama isn't interested in election integrity.
The Constitution requires that only American citizens can vote. Every state requires that. Right now, it's illegal for even a lawful permanent resident to vote in federal elections. Illegal.
Yes, but the problem is that many states, including Hakeem Jeffries' home state of New York, has extremely questionable policies when it comes to voter registration. For example, when you fill out the New York State voter registration form, it asks you for your New York State DMV number and the last 4 digits of your Social Security number. But if you don't have those, and if you're a citizen, why wouldn't you? New York State gives you options. If you do not have a DMV or Social Security number, you may use a valid photo ID. But what type of ID does that include? It doesn't say, does it? It could mean anything. New York also allows applicants to use a current utility bill as ID. You can generally open an account for utilities like gas, internet, electricity, and water, even if you are undocumented. You can also use a bank statement. But undocumented people can get bank accounts using passports and ITIN numbers. Paycheck. Yeah, this is fine, because no undocumented immigrant ever gets a job or a paycheck because, there are laws against such thing. It's illegal.
So-called SAVE Act is not about voter identification, it's about voter suppression.
Democrats have been spewing this nonsense for decades, which is ironic since they're the ones that practically invented it. But requiring proof of US citizenship to vote in our country's elections is not remotely voter suppression.
It will limit the ability of married women who no longer go by their maiden name, as is the case with tens of millions of women in America, from actually being able to vote, unless they get a specific type of identification.
Then maybe get that specific type of identification? I honestly don't see what the problem is. So the claim here is that married women are helpless and won't be able to vote because they won't have access to their marriage license or something. But if Democrats are concerned that language in the bill, or lack thereof, is going to disenfranchise voters, then maybe, as legislators, they can attempt to change the language of the bill. Do your jobs. But they won't, because Democrats aren't interested in fixing problems, they only want to resist. But listen to Leader Jeffries making the absurd claim that a driver's license proves that you're a citizen.
It's clear, based on a driver's license, for instance, that they are a citizen that is eligible to vote.
Fact check false. New York State's green light law allows all New Yorkers to apply for a standard non-commercial driver's license or learner's permit, regardless of their citizenship or lawful status in the United States. Your license or permit will not look different from other standard New York driver's licenses. All standard New York State driver's licenses look the same regardless of the proof documents you provide when you apply.
There are men and women in uniform who serve this country, are sacrificing, risking their lives in theaters of conflict all across America. And you know what? Under the so-called SAVE Act, their military identification would not be an acceptable form of ID. Are you kidding me?
Hakeem Jeffries is a liar, because the SAVE Act specifically states that documentary proof includes an applicant's official United States military identification card, together with a United States military record of service showing that the applicant's place of birth was in the United States.
Military identification is not acceptable under the so-called SAVE Act. It's a voter suppression bill. This is an effort to distract and to try to weaponize and divide. This is the Republican playbook. We're not going for it.
What a piece of garbage. Anyway, I guess that's it for now. Follow me on X at Don't Walk Run, and I'll see you next time, if there is next time.